So hello and welcome back to another episode of the Inner Edge podcast. I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Susan Schliserman. Susan is a neurofeedback specialist and a practitioner based in New Jersey with over 15 years of experience helping people achieve real change in, and you'll add on to anything I miss, mental wellness, brain function, and quality of life. She's the force behind Neurodynamics LLC and contributes to IASIS NJ, which is her business, her practice, tailoring neurofeedback treatments to individual needs. And she's helped clients with everything from anxiety, OCD, autism, different really TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, and other areas where traditional routes may not have worked. So in our conversation today, Susan and I will talk about what neurofeedback really is, how Susan got into the work, and her most memorable stories, and what it really takes, the mindset, the training, the practices to do this kind of healing work. So Susan, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. So Susan, can you tell us, for someone who doesn't really know what neurofeedback is?
It's a way, in summary, it's a way of retraining the brain or resetting the brain. So very often our brains get caught into stuck patterns, and that causes a lot of that neural dysregulation. Neurofeedback, the particular kind of neurofeedback that I'm doing now, which is called microcurrent neurofeedback, is basically helps it reset. So if somebody is in a loop, as an OCD or repetitive thoughts, or just stuck, it helps interrupt that, and then the brain can reset and go to a state of neuro self-regulation.
There's the micro one that you mentioned.
Traditional neurofeedback, I believe, started in the 1930s, and it was a way of training or retraining the brain. It's gone through many, many iterations. I sometimes say that we're kind of in the toddlerhood of it.
Wow.
A little beyond the infancy, but we're learning new things every day, every week. There's new information that comes up. We see new ways of approaching issues. If somebody had come in and was doing traditional neurofeedback, they would look at a video or a game. There'd be electrodes placed on their head, and there'd be a program that would be set up. And for 10 or 12 sessions, they're going to do whatever protocol, whatever particular program is indicated. They're going to watch. When their brain waves get into the area that they're looking for, the video is going to play, the movie's going to play, the game is going to proceed, the noise is going to come on more clearly, whoever it is that they set it up. And traditionally, somebody gets an evaluation. It could be through a brain map, what's called a QEEG, and a determination is made what area of the brain is going to be worked on first. And then the sessions go generally 10 to 12. We reevaluate, then we look at another area of the brain, and then we go through until we've gotten to a good place.
Wow.
About 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I started working with microcurrent neurofeedback. And microcurrent neurofeedback is basically disentraining. Current neurofeedback treats the entire brain every session, so you don't have to go through that evaluative process. And people can come in, they can say what's going on, and each session can be a new protocol. And things can change in the middle of a session. So if, for example, somebody came in and their primary complaint was that they couldn't sleep, we'd be looking at sleep, but other things are going to come up as well, because the entire brain, again, is treated, and the entire brain settles down and achieves that state of neural self-regulation and that calm. And it goes from what we know as fight or flight, from the parasympathetic to the sympathetic. We want to calm the system down. And so anything related to the brain can be impacted.
So for listeners who we said that, for example, if somebody who is watching this says they have anxiety or OCD or some kind of a brain injury, do you find that you've seen personal stories that you can perhaps share?
Dramatic in some cases.
Wow.
So really, I'm not going to say that this is the best thing in the world. I mean, it's the only hammer to use, obviously. There's so many tools to have in your toolbox. This is a very effective and a very powerful tool, but I'm never going to tell you it's the only tool. It's going to work synergistically with the other things that you're doing.
Wow.
It's going to support other modalities and other therapies. It can work on its own, but people can come in, again, having tried multiple ways of dealing with specific issues, and they can find that this is the one that they needed. And sometimes this is the one that they needed to support the others.
Right. Yes, yes.
That just
many times, many times. So you have to find different approaches. It's not cookie cutter for every person, I find. So in occupational therapy, whether you're working with a child, you're really working with the family, you're working with the child, you're working with the teachers, you're working with anyone and everyone that's a part of their daily life. So I feel it's not just one session for me. It's really getting to know assessing the child, evaluating, and then connecting with his parents and going forward. So to bring back to the technique and approach. So since you work in multiple, since you've been kind of the typical neurofeedback, then the micro, how do you choose which system or protocol that you have to use for a specific person or event?
right now, I'm only doing the microcurrent neurofeedback. I work with technology, so it's iAssist microcurrent neurofeedback. It's very, very gentle, and we talk about micro. If you put a cell phone to your ear, you're getting about 1,000,000 times the amount of electricity as you're getting in a session of microcurrent neurofeedback.
Wow.
3 trillionth of a watt. And yet, it can be powerful enough to do the job. And the idea behind this is really to do, the less is more. We don't want to over-treat. We don't want to overdo anything. We want to be as gentle as possible. So we always start very slow and very gently. If we need to move up, we move up. But our goal isn't necessarily to move up. Our goal is to affect change. I don't know about, let's say about you specifically.
Sure.
But when I first went to training, somebody said to me, we go into these fields to heal ourselves.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. And when I thought about it, I said, yes, that's basically what happened.
Yeah.
I had a family member who had had a lot of issues, and at one point we were kind of at a loss. What do we do next? We've done what felt like 2,000 therapies, and we knew we needed more. There was a wonderful book that was published probably about 20 years ago. Don't, hold me to the date.
Yeah.
It's called The Brain That Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Deutsch. And he speaks about all the various therapies and the ways that people are treating the brain and what they're learning about the brain. And I remember thinking to myself, I really want to talk to this man. Somehow, we have a friend who grew up with him and who knew him, and who was able to make the connection. It took about 4 months for us to get a phone call, 3 or 4 months. He said, okay. He's all around the world. He says, I have about 15 minutes. And I think he spent about an hour with us. And at the end, he said, neurofeedback. And he recommended somebody who was in the Boston area, and I didn't know anything about neurofeedback, and I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to have to go to Boston twice a week. How am I going to? But we'll do what we need to do. And the person in Boston said, absolutely not, and made some recommendations in New Jersey. I had spoken with some people, and I remember one thing that really fell into place for me was I said, we have so many, this diagnosis and that diagnosis, it's an alphabet soup. OCD and ADD and ADHD and PDD and PTSD, everything, and there are all these letters and nobody gets what's going on. Right. And she said, it's a dysregulated brain. And that was my light bulb moment.
What?
That's it. It really, it almost doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. If your brain isn't working right, if you're not functioning the way that you want to function, then you can deal with it. You can help heal the brain. And that led me into it, firstly as bringing one family member and then multiple family members. And then eventually I went into training. I trained in a few different types of traditional neurofeedback. And then I had heard about this microcurrent neurofeedback, this IASIS, and it just really seemed to click. And I said, I want to pursue this, and I did. I went for training, and I would say probably since 2019, 2020, that's the only neurofeedback that I'll do. Because it works so much more quickly, and it's so effective. And it means that if an area is sleep, and then you come in one day and you say, oh my gosh, I just witnessed the worst car accident, and my anxiety is through the roof, or I had a close call, or I went through this. I said, well, let's deal with that. We can help calm. And even though the basic protocol is still the same, we can always tweak things depending on what's going on. We can always adjust up and down. In the middle of a session, you can say, I'm starting to feel this way. I'll say, okay, let's make this adjustment. It can be that simple. And the one thing that I find that's really, really important, especially to the success of this, is the communication. That we really need that follow-up and that feedback.
Right.
Because that helps determine how we're going to go forward. When people take ownership and they're involved, it's a much more successful collaboration. When people are, you say, I'm okay, nothing much. But unlike traditional neurofeedback, after every session, I need to touch base and hear and know what's going on and how people are being impacted and affected.
Can you share some impact stories or stories that are success stories where you helped someone and you felt like they tried everything or different therapies and they weren't working, and they came to you? Perhaps, I don't know if that's really a story you could share.
Okay, story time. So here's some fun stories. One was someone who had a stroke, and he came from Pennsylvania, and he had gone through therapy for about 18 months. So he was about 18 months post-stroke, and he felt he had been about 85% recovered, but there was still that last little bit. And I worked with him, and after the second or third session, he also had that claw, what I call the
Claw hand?
Claw hand. Couldn't open. And I said, how about if we work on this a little? And we did. And I said, okay, how are you doing? And he went like this, and he went like this. And then he started laughing. And I said, what's so funny? He said, you should see the look on your face. He was amazed at what my whole reaction, that after one session of attempting to do something, he was able to open his hand. And then I asked him, forgive me. And he said, no, he didn't have that much control. I said, I'll tell you what. Someone else came, a friend of mine came, and she had not been able to sleep. She was on sleeping meds and still having issues. I said, why don't we try this? I was pretty new at it. I was actually working with another neurofeedback practice at the time, a traditional one, but I set up my equipment. In the middle of the first session, a couple of minutes into it, she said, can this make pain go away? And I said, yeah. And she said, I've had chest pain for 20 years. They know it's not my heart. I've been checked out multiple times, but all my stress and my trauma goes into my chest. She goes, it just went away. And she had a total of 2 or 3 sessions. And she told me, and this lasted for years, could be confronted with her trigger. And she said, and what happens is I'm triggered, I feel, and then it goes away. And that's 20 years worth. I've worked, one person I'm working with and currently is someone who has Alzheimer's. Now, certain areas, certain things you can deal with because they're kind of one and done. You've had a stroke, for example, and you could deal with various things and get to a better place. Alzheimer's, constant PTSD, let's say first responders, or if you're in the army, you know, if you're fighting, it's a constant assault on your body, on your system. Alzheimer's isn't curable, but the story is I've worked with a few Alzheimer's patients, and one family came to me. Their mother did not know their names. Her personality had changed. She was so nasty, is a calm word for it, for what she went through. She was so explosive and nasty. She'd bring her own kids to tears, even though they knew what was going on. She had been in a PT program. She got kicked out because she upset everybody who was there. Her balance was off, and they didn't know what to do with her. One of her sons, soon after I started, and she was pretty nasty and violent with me initially. And he said, she really needs to go to heaven. And we worked and worked. And she wasn't very happy. Fast forward, I'm with her now about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years. But she knows her children's names. She's gone out to dinner and written a thank you note. She plays games in the evening. She, instead of cursing and yelling at me, she'll give me a little, say hi to your husband for me. Mostly very pleasant. Her balance is better. She has a PT who now comes to the house and said she hasn't deteriorated in a year. So we've been able to put the floor underneath it.
Yes.
And slow down the progression.
What's your secret sauce here?
Microcurrent neurofeedback. But they're also very aggressive. I see this person generally 3 or 4 times a week. And she's part of the family again. And they could celebrate holidays with just about everybody. Certainly with that family and with others. I just become a team member. I'm part of the team to help support and to help give what's necessary.
I think that's one of a lot of times that's what's missing. A lot of people's therapies are just very, you meet with a person and that's the furthest people go. But if you're going above and beyond and you become a team member with the family, with the client, I think that's a lot more meaningful and purposeful. So Susan, what do you think has been the biggest challenge in this type of work? You know, maybe like, is it more of like the public acceptance of neurofeedback, or is it more the accessibility or the cost for clients? Is there anything specific that comes to mind that you find has been, you know, it's come a long way maybe, and people have been educated about neurofeedback? Because a lot of people don't know what it is, and that's one of the reasons why I find that one of my friends who's an occupational therapist, I was telling you earlier, she, I think, is doing the very basic neurofeedback. I'll double check with her, but until she told me about it, I really didn't know much about it. So do you feel there's still some challenges with neurofeedback?
I think people on the West Coast are more familiar with it overall. People here are learning more and more about it. I think it's getting out there, but I also think there are people who look at complementary ways of dealing with things. There are people who look at traditional medicine, and then there are people who explore and see what else is there. There is a cost to this, obviously. If insurance reimburses, it's a lot easier. If they don't reimburse, people have to decide where are they going to put limited resources and how are they going to juggle the various things available to them. You know, there are people who could do acupuncture and maybe even energy healing, and they want to do neurofeedback, and they want to do massage therapy. Well, that's a lot of money out of pocket if there's no support for it. And insurance over the past few years or decades has been stingier and stingier. You know, there are people who do get out-of-network benefits. There are people who can handle it. But I think it's a stretch. And I think a lot of people who come really come sometimes as a last gasp. What else are we going to do?
Right.
You know, we're at our wits' end, or we don't know what to do, or maybe this will help. And I think that's really, and for me personally, it's really, really difficult, because when there are people who really need something, really want something, and then find that they can't do it.
Right. Or most of your work is with adults.
No, children. This particular neurofeedback can be done with infants. I think
Wow.
recently I heard of a 2-week-old, of a 4-week-old. I think it was the 4-week-old who hadn't been sleeping, was very colicky. Parents were miserable, the baby was miserable, everybody was miserable, and one treatment.
Just one treatment.
And the baby slept through the night. The parents slept through the night. Everybody was happy. Now, you can always tell the success stories, but this is an area that I heard of. This is something that happened, and I heard about it maybe 4 weeks ago. And I've worked with 2-year-olds and 10-year-olds and adolescents and young all the way through. So I could say really from infancy, and my Alzheimer's patient is about to become 96.
Wow, that's amazing.
So there's a whole gamut.
Yes,
and
yes.
It can also be done on animals.
Really?
So when you talk about the placebo effect,
Yeah.
infants generally don't know about the placebo effect, and neither do animals. And there are practitioners who will work with animals, with horses, with dogs, with cats, high anxiety animals.
It's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
With AI really exploding in the world, where do you think neurofeedback is going to go with that? Do you find that AI can help take neurofeedback to a different level?
I think AI is going to play a role, and I think it's too early for us to really project how. Okay. Neurofeedback, I think I mentioned earlier, I think is in the toddlerhood. Every week, every month, they're learning new things about the brain and how to impact the brain and different areas of the brain and how to work with it.
Right.
And I think as we become more and more sophisticated, I think AI is going to be a tool to help with that. I'm not sure. I mean, there are already at-home neurofeedback programs. People put on helmets. They're trained to do things at home. Some are helpful, some are not. Usually those things are pre-programmed. I mean, if you want to do the microcurrent, such as I do, I mean, you need somebody who's been trained and kind of knows what they're doing.
So somebody who's in the field of therapy, whether they are a physical therapist, occupational therapist, or even a doctor, and they say, you know what, I saw Susan's work and I really feel inspired. Or even somebody like my friend who's been doing the very typical neurofeedback, and she says, I want to focus on microcurrent. How does one get into that?
The system I'm using is IASIS. I think it's FDA cleared. It's going for FDA approval. They have all that. They have a lot of research that's being done. There's iasistech.com. They can go and they can look at it. People have to have licensure before they can go into training, and they can, they would tell you how to go about training and what to do and what's required. A lot of professionals do. Therapists use it, physicians use it, dentists use it. There are people who have TMJ, actually can help with TMJ.
Wow.
It can help with tinnitus or tinnitus, depending on your pronunciation. So there are a number of dentists that use it. There are a lot of people who like to bring it into their practice because it supports other work that they're doing.
Wow. If you're looking back and reflecting the last 15, 20 years that you've been doing this, what's one piece of advice you can give? I guess if you give somebody advice that's coming in from a different profession and they're coming in fresh, if you give them any advice on something, you would give your own younger self advice and say, this is what I learned these last 15, 20 years. If it was like a few pieces of something that you felt like that could have changed, maybe saved you time. Because in the beginning you mentioned how when you started doing the microcurrent, you felt the results were faster, more efficient, and you were able to visually see the results. If there's even one piece of advice you can give somebody starting out in the neurofeedback world.
Keep up with the changes. Listen to people, listen to what they're really saying, because very often people will come in and they'll have one list of things that are going on, and there's really a larger backstory. And I think you also need to suss that out for some people. And there's also a very small number of people who might not even consciously be aware of who don't want to get better. People are sometimes invested in their dysfunction. And why is it? It gives them an excuse, it gives a crutch.
Wow.
And they might not even be conscious of it. Yes, I want to get better. But also, when there's a new reality, then there's also a new you. How do you reevaluate yourself? Where do you stand in the world? How are you going to function?
Right.
So some people find that scary, and I think that's subconscious. And so very often, you know, when I'm talking or if I'm doing an intake or if I'm following through, very often I'll recommend therapy, because people need also to understand themselves and what's going on and what help bring them to this place. So sometimes it's physical, and sometimes it's a combination of things, and it's trauma, and it could be early trauma, and it could be generational trauma. I mean, we have so much of that, and our world is so complicated and disrupted, you know, and it's hitting all of us on visceral levels. So, you know, we feel it in our gut. And by the way, this also helps gut issues.
That is a big one. We have a lot of people that can use your help in that area. And, you know, for listeners that are thinking, you know, I want to get in touch with Susan, how can listeners get a hold of you, learn more, even try a session?
It's easy. My website is iasisnj.com, IASIS.
I'll put that in the show notes,
My email is hpneuro@att.net, and I could give out a phone number that they could call. It's 732-937-69. I'll get back to them.
Thank you so much, Susan, for taking the time, telling us your incredible stories and sharing really your practice, success stories, and opening up the minds of really a lot of people, including myself, on neurofeedback that I really did not have before I met you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.